The rain was steady that evening, soft enough to feel gentle on the windshield, but constant enough to erase the lines of the road. Michael tightened his grip on the steering wheel as the GPS on his phone blinked, recalculating again and again, its robotic voice repeating the same sentence in a strange loop. Turn left, recalculating, turn left, recalculating. But there was no left turn. Just a long, empty stretch of highway, surrounded by trees that looked too dense for any road to cut through. He frowned, leaning forward, wiping the condensation off the inside of the glass. He had driven this way countless times before on business trips, but tonight the directions seemed off. It wasn't the first time his GPS had lost signal out here, but something about the way it kept recalculating made his stomach turn. The clock on his dashboard flicked to 11:11 p.m. A small shiver ran down his spine, though he didn't know why. He rubbed his face, exhaling, then decided to pull over and reset his phone. As he slowed, headlights bounced off something up ahead, a sign. The reflective paint glistened against the rain. He hadn't noticed a sign here before. When he passed it, he squinted, reading through the haze of the storm. Welcome to Greystone. Population, 3,482. Michael blinked. Greystone? He'd never heard of it. He leaned toward his phone, scrolling through his offline maps, typing the name into the search bar. No results. His GPS spun in circles, then froze completely. For a moment, he thought about turning around. But the gas gauge was low, and the thought of running out of fuel in the storm unsettled him more than driving into an unknown town. So he followed the sign. The road curved sharply, almost like it hadn't existed until he needed it. And then there it was, a narrow stretch leading down into a valley. Lights flickered below, faint but promising. He exhaled with relief. As he entered, he saw rows of houses, neat, old-fashioned, like they'd been preserved from another era. The streets were empty, but every porch light glowed. Curtains were drawn, yet behind them shadows moved, like people were awake, living their lives. Michael's stomach tightened again. He finally spotted a gas station on the corner. The lights buzzed, flickering. A tall man in a raincoat stood behind the counter, staring blankly through the glass. Michael parked, stepping into the downpour, pulling his jacket tight. The bell above the door jingled as he pushed it open. Inside, the air was stale, almost too still, like it hadn't moved in years. The man behind the counter smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Evening," the man said, voice flat. Evening. Do you guys take card?" Michael asked, pulling his wallet halfway from his pocket. The man's eyes flickered to the clock on the wall. Michael followed his gaze. It read 11:11, just like his dashboard. But the seconds hand wasn't moving. The man nodded once. "We take card. Pump 3 works." Michael thanked him, uneasy. When he turned to leave, the man added softly, "You shouldn't stay past midnight." Michael froze, half turning. "Excuse me." The man's expression didn't change. "Storm makes the roads dangerous." Michael left quickly, his pulse spiking. He tried to shake off the words as nothing more than small-town superstition. Still, his chest felt heavy as he fueled up. When he got back in his car, he glanced at his phone again. No service, just a blank screen with the time stuck at 11:11. As he pulled out of the station, he noticed something else. The same houses he had driven past earlier seemed different. Their curtains were no longer drawn. Every window now revealed empty rooms inside, hollow and abandoned. The porch light still burned, but no shadows moved. Michael's throat tightened. He accelerated. The streets twisted into directions he didn't remember. The town seemed to fold in on itself, each turn leading him back to the same intersection. A diner on one corner, a barbershop across from it, a dark alley yawning between them. He drove in circles, faster each time. The gas gauge didn't move. Neither did the clock. It was still 11:11. Finally, frustrated, he slammed the brakes and climbed out, rain soaking him instantly. He shouted into the empty street, his voice echoing off buildings that felt too hollow to hold sound. "Hello? Anyone here?" Silence. Then, faintly, from the alley, came a whisper. His own name. Michael froze. His heart hammered. He backed toward the car, fumbling with the door handle, but the whisper grew louder closer. When he spun toward the alley, he swore he saw someone standing at the end of it, someone who looked exactly like him. And then, the lights across the town flickered, all at once, in unison. The last thing Michael saw before he dove into his car was his own reflection in the diner's glass window, but it wasn't moving the way he was. Michael slammed the car door shut, chest heaving, fingers trembling on the steering wheel. The storm outside roared louder now, sheets of rain sliding down the windshield in relentless waves. He tried to steady his breathing, but his eyes kept darting toward the diner across the street. The reflection in its window still stood there, his own face staring back at him, but perfectly still, as if frozen in time. "No," he muttered under his breath. "I'm just tired. I've been driving too long." He tried the ignition. The car coughed once and died. He twisted the key again. Nothing. The headlights flickered weakly before plunging him into shadow. Michael let out a frustrated growl, running his hands through his soaked hair. Then he noticed something on the dashboard. The clock still read 11:11. It hadn't changed at all. His phone was dead too, though he'd charged it just before leaving the city. The diner was the only building with lights on. A neon sign above the door buzzed faintly, the letters flickering, "Eat." He didn't want to go in, but the thought of sitting in his dead car in this endless loop of rain was unbearable. He opened the door and sprinted across the street, his shoes splashing in puddles that rippled unnaturally, as if something moved beneath them. The diner door creaked open with surprising ease. A bell jingled overhead, shrill and sharp against the oppressive silence. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and something metallic like rust. Booths lined the windows, their vinyl seats cracked and torn. A jukebox glowed faintly in the corner, though no music played. And then he saw her. A woman sat in the farthest booth, facing the door. Her hair was long and dark, her face pale under the neon light. She smiled faintly when she saw him, as though she had been expecting him. "You finally made it," she said. Michael froze mid-step. "Excuse me." She tilted her head, her smile never faltering. It always takes a while for newcomers to find the diner. The roads like to confuse people. "I'm not staying," Michael said quickly. "My car broke down. Do you have a phone I can use?" Her eyes flicked toward the counter. Behind it, an old rotary phone sat on the wall. "You can try," she said, "but it won't call anyone outside Greystone." Michael's pulse quickened. "Greystone? This town? It's not on any map." The woman's smile widened. "Of course it isn't. That's the point." He hesitated, then marched toward the phone. He lifted the receiver, pressing it to his ear. At first, all he heard was static. Then, faintly a whisper, "Michael." His hand went cold. He slammed the receiver back onto its hook, backing away. "What the hell is this place?" The woman finally stood, moving slowly, deliberately. Up close, her features looked strange, as though her face wasn't meant to hold a smile that wide. "Greystone isn't a place you find," she said softly. "It's a place that finds you." Michael's stomach twisted. He turned toward the door, but before he could reach it, the bell jingled again. A man had entered, soaked from the rain, his trench coat dripping onto the floor, his hat shadowing his face. He walked with a stiff, measured gait and slid into a booth without looking at either of them. Michael watched nervously as the waitress, who hadn't been there a second ago, emerged from the kitchen, carrying a pot of coffee. Her eyes were downcast, her movements mechanical, like she was part of some ritual. She poured the man a cup, steam curling into the air. Michael turned back to the woman. "Look, I don't know what this is, but I need to get back on the highway. Just tell me the way out." Her expression darkened, the faint smile fading at last. "There is no way out. Midnight is coming." Michael's breath caught. What happens at midnight? The lights flickered. The jukebox crackled, emitting a warped note, like a song trying to begin but twisting in on itself. The man in the trench coat finally lifted his head. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, as though they'd been scooped out and replaced with shadows. His mouth curved into a slow grin. Michael staggered back, colliding with the counter. The waitress froze mid-step, her coffee pot trembling in her grip. The woman whispered, almost too quietly to hear, "At midnight, the town decides who stays." The clock above the counter struck once. 11:59. Michael's eyes darted to his watch. It still read 11:11, but the diner's clock was moving. He bolted for the door, shoving it open, rain slamming against his face. The streets looked different now. Longer, narrower, the buildings warped as if stretched by invisible hands. He sprinted toward his car, but it was gone. In its place stood another sign, glowing faintly in the storm. Welcome to Greystone. Population, 3,483. Michael's breath hitched. The number had increased. And then he understood. He was the new resident. Rain hammered the pavement like endless static, blurring the world into streaks of gray and black. Michael stumbled backward from the glowing sign, his heart thudding painfully in his chest. Population, 3,483. That number hadn't been there before. It had changed when he arrived. No. Oh, no, no, he whispered, gripping his hair with trembling hands. I'm not staying here. This isn't real. But the storm didn't let up. The streets stretched endlessly, every corner leading back to the same intersection. The diner's neon sign still buzzed faintly in the distance, though it seemed further away now. Michael spun around, searching desperately for any landmark. And that's when the clock tower struck. Zong! Its bell echoed across the empty streets, so deep and heavy it rattled his bones. Zong! He turned toward the sound. There, at the center of town, a towering clock loomed above the buildings, black against the storm-lit sky. He could have sworn it hadn't been there before. Zong! 11:59. He started running. He didn't know why. Only that something in him screamed that if he wasn't out of Greystone by midnight, he'd never leave at all. The streets shifted as he ran. Houses flickered between decay and life. 1 second warm lights glowing inside. The next rotting, windows shattered, roofs collapsed. The air itself seemed to pulse in rhythm with the clock tower. Zong! He stumbled into the town square. The cobblestones were slick with rain, but in the center stood the clock tower, impossibly tall, its face glowing faintly. He looked up just as the final minute ticked away. Zong! Midnight. The world went silent. The rain froze midair, drops hanging motionless around him like glass beads. Michael's chest rose and fell, but no sound came from his breath. He looked at his hands, trembling in the stillness. Then, slowly he noticed them. Figures, dozens of them, lining the edges of the square, emerging from doorways and alleys. Men, women, children, dressed in clothes from every era. Some in modern jackets, some in faded suits from the 1940s, others in tattered dresses that looked centuries old, all of them staring at him. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow, and yet familiar. Michael's voice broke in the silence. What do you want from me? One figure stepped forward, a man in a soaked trench coat, the same man from the diner. His hollow eyes glowed faintly, as though reflecting the clock tower's light. You're here now, the man said. His voice was low, distorted, as though spoken through a broken radio. Greystone has chosen. Michael shook his head violently. Chosen? No, I didn't choose this. I just needed gas. The man tilted his head. We all just needed something. And then we found the road. A murmur rippled through the gathered figures. Michael realized their lips weren't moving, yet he could hear them whispering in unison. Words layered over each other, indecipherable, like static turned into voices. He clutched his ears, dropping to his knees. Stop it. Please stop. The whispers ceased instantly. The silence was even worse. Then the woman from the diner stepped forward. Her pale face was unchanged. That faint, impossible smile stretched across it. Every midnight, she said softly, Greystone must keep its number. Michael's breath quickened. What does that mean? She glanced at the glowing clock tower. Its face shifted. Instead of time, numbers appeared. 3,482. Michael froze. That was the town's population before he arrived. The woman leaned closer. Her eyes were empty, her smile fixed. Someone must stay, and someone must go. As she spoke, the air shimmered beside him. Michael turned and nearly collapsed. It was him, another Michael, standing a few feet away, soaked from the rain, chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm with his own. But this Michael's face was calm. Too calm. His lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "No," Michael whispered. "No, that's not me. That's not real." The copy tilted its head, mirroring him perfectly. Then, in a voice identical to his own, it spoke. "You've been chosen." The figures closed in, surrounding him. Their hollow eyes glowed faintly as they repeated in unison. "Chosen, chosen, chosen." Michael backed away, but the doppelganger stepped forward. Its movements were smooth, deliberate, as if it already knew what Michael would do. "Only one of us leaves," it said. Michael's pulse pounded. He wanted to run, but the crowd pressed closer, leaving no escape. He looked up at the clock tower, desperate for some clue, some sign. The numbers shifted again. 3,483. The new total. His arrival. He understood. If he wanted to survive, he would have to take someone else's place. The doppelganger's smile widened. It extended a hand, as if offering him a choice. Stay, or go. Michael's vision blurred with rain and tears. His mind raced. There had to be another way out. He thought of his car, his phone, the roads twisting endlessly back to the square. But the crowd waited, their hollow eyes locked on him, patient and unblinking. The bell of the clock tower began to toll again. Dawn. 1 a.m. The figures spoke as one, their voices like the grinding of stone. Decide. Michael stood frozen, heart pounding, staring at the outstretched hand of his double. If he took it, would he be free? Or would he lose himself forever inside this cursed town? He didn't know, but he had only 1 hour left to decide. The sound of the bell echoed long after it stopped ringing, vibrating in Michael's bones. The figures stood motionless in the square, their pale eyes fixed on him. The doppelganger's hand was still outstretched, patient, like it already knew how this would end. Michael's throat tightened. "I don't belong here," he said, his voice trembling. "I didn't choose this. I just wanted to get home." The doppelganger tilted its head. "None of us chose. But the town doesn't ask. It decides." The crowd whispered in unison, a low murmur that scraped against his nerves. Decide. 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 Michael stumbled backward, shaking his head. There has to be another way. Another road. Another. The woman from the diner stepped forward, her pale smile unchanged. "There is no road once you've seen Greystone. You can't leave unless someone takes your place." His stomach twisted. He remembered the sign. "Welcome to Greystone. Population, 3,483. The numbers weren't symbolic. They were literal. He turned to the doppelganger, his chest heaving. "So what? If I take your hand, you stay and I leave." The copy's smile deepened. "One of us must remain. One of us must go." Michael's thoughts raced. If this thing was him, did it mean someone else had already been replaced? Was Greystone filled with echoes, versions of people who had once stumbled in by accident? The clock tower loomed above them, its glowing numbers pulsing faintly. 3,483. He knew it would never change unless he made a choice. But how could he decide to condemn someone, anyone, to this place? The figures pressed closer. Their whispers grew louder, overlapping until it became a wave of sound that nearly knocked him to his knees. Decide. 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 Michael clutched his ears. "Stop it," he screamed. "Stop." And they did. Silence slammed into the square like a door shutting. The doppelgangers stepped closer, hands still extended. "You only delay the inevitable," it said in his own voice. Michael's chest rose and fell. His mind screamed at him to run, but his body felt rooted in place. The storm above had frozen again, raindrops hanging motionless in the air. The town itself seemed to hold its breath. Finally, he whispered, "No." The doppelganger smile faltered for the first time. Michael clenched his fists. "I'm not choosing. You hear me? I won't play your game. I'm not staying, and I'm not taking anyone's place. There has to be another way out." For a moment, nothing happened. The figures stood silently, the clock tower glowing faintly above them. Then, slowly, the crowd parted. At the far end of the square, a narrow street appeared, one he hadn't noticed before. Its cobblestones glistened with a strange, silver light, and at the end of it stood a gate. Beyond the gate, he saw nothing but darkness. The doppelganger's voice was low. The road. Michael's pulse quickened. That's my way out. The woman's pale smile widened. The road takes you where you're meant to go, but it always asks for a toll. His mouth went dry. What kind of toll? The figures whispered again, softer this time, almost like a lullaby. A soul for a soul. A life for a life. Michael's chest tightened. The meaning was clear. If he refused to take the doppelganger's hand, he could still leave, but only if someone else stayed behind in his place. His mind raced. Who? He was the only outsider here. Unless. His eyes widened as he remembered the gas station attendant, the waitress, the woman in the diner. Were they real? Or were they echoes, illusions created by the town? If they were already trapped, would the town accept one of them in his place? The doppelganger tilted its head, as if reading his thoughts. The town doesn't care who. It only cares that the number stays the same. Michael's heart pounded. He could make a choice. He could leave. But what cost? He turned toward the glowing street, the silver gate shimmering at the end. His feet carried him forward before he could stop himself. The crowd watched silently, their eyes following him. The doppelganger didn't move, but its faint smile returned, as if amused by his desperation. As Michael reached the gate, the air grew colder. His breath fogged in front of him. He pressed his hands against the iron bars. The darkness beyond shifted faintly, as though something alive waited inside. The woman's voice echoed behind him. Once you pass through, you can never return. Choose wisely. Michael closed his eyes. His mind screamed at him to run, to leave, to survive. But his chest ached with the weight of the choice. Was his freedom worth condemning someone else to Greystone? He turned back toward the square. The figures were waiting. Silent. Patient. The doppelganger stood in the center, hands still outstretched. The bell tolled again. Zong. 2 Uhr nachts. Michael's time was running out. He gripped the gate tighter, his knuckles white. If I don't choose, what happens? The woman's smile never wavered. Then the town will choose for you. Michael swallowed hard. He didn't know what that meant, but every part of him screamed that it would be worse than making the decision himself. The whispers rose again, louder, pressing against his skull like a tide. Decide. 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 Michael shut his eyes, trembling. He could feel the pull of the darkness beyond the gate, the weight of the doppelganger's gaze, the silent judgment of the crowd. And then he spoke. I'll decide. The whispers stopped instantly. The silence was suffocating. The doppelganger's smile widened, triumphant. Michael's chest heaved. He wasn't sure what choice he had made yet, but the town knew. The town always knew. The silence after his words was unbearable, a crushing weight that pressed down on Michael's chest. The crowd of pale-eyed figures didn't move, didn't breathe. Only the faint ticking from the frozen clock tower filled the square, though its hands no longer turned. The doppelganger lowered its hand. Its smile had changed, no longer mocking, no longer patient. It looked almost satisfied. You've chosen, it said, though Michael hadn't said what. His throat felt dry. I didn't say who. The woman from the diner stepped forward, her pale smile never fading. The town knows. The town always knows. Michael's heart thudded painfully in his chest. No, that's not how this works. If I have to choose, then I choose. Not the town. Not you. The whispers rose again, circling him like a storm. Choose. 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 Michael clutched his head, shaking. Stop it. And then, silence again. The doppelganger's voice was soft but sharp, like a knife sliding into his thoughts. If you refuse, the town will keep you. And someone else, someone outside, will vanish in your place. Someone you love. Michael's blood ran cold. No. His mind spun back to the last person he'd spoken to before driving tonight. His sister, Anna. She'd called, asking if he was coming for dinner tomorrow. He'd laughed, told her he'd be there, told her to keep the lasagna warm. His voice cracked. Don't you dare. The doppelganger stepped closer. Its eyes gleamed with an unnatural light. The town balances itself. If not here, then elsewhere. A life must remain. A soul must stay. Michael stumbled back, his breathing ragged. He stared at the glowing gate, the silver light shimmering faintly. His way out, if he could live with the cost. Please, he whispered. There has to be another way. The woman tilted her head, her pale smile unwavering. There is no other way. Greystone exists because the balance is kept. You stepped into a place not meant to be seen. Now, the town must claim what is owed. Michael's fists clenched. His chest burned with fury, but also with fear. He couldn't let Anna be dragged into this. He couldn't sacrifice someone else to save himself. But wasn't that exactly what they were asking him to do? The doppelganger's voice came again, low and taunting. You already know the truth. The moment you saw Greystone, you became part of it. The only way out is to let go of who you were. Michael's breath caught. What do you mean? The figure's smile widened. Step forward. Take my hand. Leave yourself behind. Then, and only then, you walk free. Michael's stomach twisted. That was the toll. He could leave Greystone, but not as himself. He would leave something essential, some piece of his soul, locked in this place forever. And what would be left of him if he did? The whispers rose again, urging, demanding, choose. 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 Michael shut his eyes tight, trembling. His heart screamed at him to run through the gate, to take the doppelganger's hand, to do anything to escape this nightmare. But a colder, quieter part of him wondered if there was something else, something they weren't telling him. He opened his eyes. What happens if I don't choose? The woman's smile didn't falter. Then the town chooses, and you won't like its choice. A chill rippled down his spine. Suddenly, the square around him flickered. For a split second, he wasn't standing in Greystone anymore. He was in his sister's kitchen. Anna stood at the counter, humming softly as she poured a glass of wine. The smell of garlic and tomatoes filled the air. She turned her head slightly, as if she heard something, but her eyes were pale. Michael gasped. No. The vision shattered like glass, and he was back in the square. The doppelganger's smile widened. The town has already reached for her. You are running out of time. The bell tolled again. Zong, 3 Uhr nachts. Michael staggered. He could feel the pull now, stronger, dragging him toward a decision he didn't want to make. The figures pressed closer, their pale eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. He turned toward the gate, the shimmering silver light reflecting in his eyes. Beyond it, the darkness shifted, waiting, his only way out. But then he looked back at the doppelganger, at the crowd, at the frozen square. And he realized something. The town wasn't just asking for a choice. It was feeding on it, feeding on the fear, the doubt, the despair. That was why it existed. That was how it kept itself alive. Michael's chest heaved. If he chose, he would lose, no matter what. But what if he didn't play their game at all? His voice trembled, but he forced the words out. I won't choose. Not you. Not her. Not anyone. The whispers roared instantly, deafening, shaking the square like an earthquake. The ground cracked beneath his feet. The clock tower's glowing numbers flickered violently. The doppelganger's smile twisted into a snarl. Then the town chooses. The figures surged forward, their pale faces stretching unnaturally, mouths opening in silent screams. The storm above the town unfroze, rain crashing down in a torrent. The air filled with a low, grinding sound, like the earth itself was being torn apart. Michael staggered back toward the gate, shielding his face. The silver light flared brighter, pulsing, beckoning him forward. The darkness beyond writhed, alive, hungry. The bell tolled again, the sound booming through the chaos. Zong, 3 Uhr 30 nachts. Half an hour until dawn, or whatever passed for dawn in this place. Michael's heart pounded. He didn't know what would happen when the clock struck 4, but every instinct screamed that he wouldn't survive to see it if he didn't act. The doppelganger lunged forward, its pale hand reaching for him. It is decided, Michael shouted, his voice raw. No, it's my choice. And he ran, straight toward the gate. The silver bars parted on their own, the darkness beyond swirling violently. He felt its pull, cold and merciless, but he didn't stop. He hurled himself through, the square collapsing behind him, the whispers shrieking in fury. For a moment, there was nothing, just endless blackness, weightless and suffocating. He thought he had died. Then he opened his eyes and found himself standing on a familiar street. His heart leapt. The gas station. His car. The world was normal again. The neon sign buzzed faintly in the night. His car sat parked exactly where he'd left it. He gasped, stumbling toward it. He was out. He had made it. But as he reached for the door handle, he froze. There, in the driver's seat, sat someone else. Himself. The other Michael turned his head slowly, his eyes pale and glowing. He smiled. Michael's stomach dropped. He wasn't free. Not yet. Michael staggered back from the car, his breath catching in his throat. The man in the driver's seat, his own reflection, his own body, smiled with pale, glowing eyes. No, Mike had whispered. No, I made it out. I made it out. The other Michael tilted his head, the smile never faltering. He reached for the ignition, and the engine roared to life. Headlights flared, blinding Michael where he stood. He stumbled backward onto the cracked pavement. The gas station flickered unnaturally, its neon sign buzzing in a pattern that felt almost like words he couldn't read. The night sky was wrong, too dark, stars twisted into unfamiliar constellations. Michael's chest tightened. He wasn't out. Not really. He had only stepped into another layer of the trap. The doppelganger rolled down the window. Its voice was his own, but colder, hollow. The town let you run, but it doesn't let you leave. Michael's fist shook. Why me? Why are you doing this to me? The copy's smile widened. Because you saw. That's all it takes. The headlights flared brighter. Michael shielded his face, stumbling blindly away from the car. The ground seemed to stretch beneath his feet, the parking lot longer than it should have been, endless. He ran. His lungs burned, his legs aching as he sprinted past the gas station, down the empty highway. But the road twisted unnaturally, bending in impossible directions. No matter how far he ran, the gas station remained on the horizon behind him, glowing faintly in the dark. Michael dropped to his knees, gasping. His mind screamed. There was no escape. And then he heard it. The bell. Zong. 4 Uhr nachts. The sound rippled through the night, deep and resonant, echoing inside his chest. The air grew colder, heavier. The world around him seemed to blur, the highway melting like wet paint. Shapes emerged from the darkness. The townspeople of Greystone, pale eyes, frozen smiles, walking silently toward him from every direction. The woman from the diner, the gas station attendant, the faceless crowd from Square. And in the center of them all, his doppelganger. It stepped forward, hand outstretched once more. Michael shook his head violently, stumbling back. No, I told you, I won't choose. I won't. The doppelganger's smile widened. Then the town has chosen. Michael's breath caught. The crowd parted. And there she was. Anna. His sister stood at the edge of the highway, her hair damp with rain, confusion in her eyes. She clutched her phone in one hand, her keys in the other, as if she had just stepped out of her apartment. Michael, she whispered, her voice trembling. Where are we? Michael's heart shattered. No, please, not her. Leave her out of this. The doppelganger's pale eyes gleamed. The town balances itself. You wouldn't choose. So it chose her. Anna's gaze darted around, her breath quickening. Michael, what is this place? What's happening? Michael's chest ached. He could barely breathe. He wanted to run to her, to protect her, but his legs felt heavy, rooted to the ground. The doppelganger stepped closer to Anna, its hand still extended. She will take your place. You may leave. Michael shook his head violently, tears burning his eyes. No, take me, not her. Please. The figure tilted its head. You already refused. The town listens. The town remembers. The toll must be paid. Anna's pale face twisted with terror as the crowd closed in around her. She stumbled backward, her voice breaking. Michael, help me. Michael's heart tore open. He couldn't let this happen. He wouldn't. With every ounce of strength left in him, he lunged forward, shoving through the pale-eyed figures. Their cold hands clawed at his arms, dragging at his clothes, but he pushed harder, screaming Anna's name. He reached her just as the doppelganger's hand brushed her shoulder. No! Michael roared, shoving Anna behind him. Take me. Do you hear me? Take me. The crowd froze. The whispers stopped. The doppelganger's smile changed, widening into something monstrous. At last, A choice. The figures surged forward, their pale hands wrapping around Michael's arms, his legs, his chest. The cold burned his skin, sinking deep into his bones. He screamed, but held his ground, forcing Anna further back. Her voice cracked with sobs. "Michael, don't." He turned his head, meeting her terrified eyes one last time. His voice was raw but steady. "Go, Anna. Live. Please." And then the darkness swallowed him. The last thing he saw was the doppelganger's face, his own face, smiling. When Michael opened his eyes, he was standing in the square of Greystone again. The clock tower loomed above, its glowing numbers fixed at 3,483. The storm hung frozen in the sky. The crowd of pale-eyed figures stood silently, watching. And in the center, another figure emerged. Anna. Her eyes were wide, glowing faintly. Her lips curved into the same pale smile. Michael's chest collapsed with despair. No matter what he had done, the town had claimed her anyway. The whispers rose once more, soft and unending. "Welcome, welcome, welcome." Michael fell to his knees, his screams swallowed by the silent, endless town. Days later, or perhaps years, for time no longer mattered, a traveler drove down a forgotten road. His GPS flickered. The signal died, and up ahead, in the darkness, he saw a sign. "Welcome to Greystone. Population 3,483.